If you need one, let me know. Folks, as we get started tonight, we are streaming live on YouTube. We have a hearing starting off at 7, so that's both an audio and a visual recording. That's at RobesonRevealed.com or Robeson, whatever it says there. So guide yourself accordingly. We leave that run during the entire open meeting.
All right, it's 7 o'clock. We will call the Robeson Township regular meeting to order at 7 o'clock, March 25th. We'll do a pledge of allegiance to the land of the sides and all military personnel.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, let's do a quick roll call. Mrs. Dora.
Yes.
Mr. Dolan.
Here.
Mr. Bittler.
Here.
I'm here, and I will turn the meeting over to Solicitor Orlando for our public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. First order of business is the authentication of the board exhibits for the hearing. Board Exhibit B1 is proof of application and notice of this public hearing, which was advertised in the Reading Eagle on March the 5th. Board Exhibit B2 is a transmittal letter from our office evidencing the fact that the Berks County Law Library was mailed an attested copy of the proposed ordinance. Board Exhibit B3 is a transmittal letter from our office dated March 1st, evidencing the fact that the full text of the ordinance was mailed to the Reading Eagle Company. And Board Exhibit B4 is the ordinance itself, which contains the stamp of the Berks County Law Library, evidencing the fact that the Law Library did receive the attested copy of the ordinance prior to tonight's hearing. The hearing,
Mr. Orlando, if I may, is there an exhibit reflecting in writing from our collective bargaining agreement or collective bargaining unit that they're in agreement with that under our ordinance? We need a written agreement from our collective bargaining.
I have no such agreement, nor was I told that there was any agreement.
It's in our ordinances that we require that, particularly for certain reasons, that and the concern at least raised by me as it relates to the advertising. While I'm not in opposition to this, the hearing itself is not properly, it's not proper. So I would suggest we delay this to, make sure our ducks are in order.
Are you questioning our solicitor again?
And so, Mr. Orlando, you thought everything was in order. You checked that out since Thursday, correct?
Well, yeah, you're talking about two different things. First of all, Mr. Chairman, yes, we verified last week that a question that was raised by one of our citizens concerning the correct citation in the ordinance. He was concerned it was incorrect, and I verified that it was correct. What Tim's talking about is not related to the ordinance procedural posture of the ordinance. I'm not familiar at all with what he's talking about. Wish he would have mentioned it before. But
Mr. Orlando, I just found out about that literally 30 minutes ago. I've been reading the stream of ailment emails that come out last minute. And just to make sure the record is clear, I also had some concerns with the advertising. We have referenced not the proper ordinances. So it's not just a citizen that was concerned, it was also me. So this hearing is not duly constituted in my opinion.
well, I believe the hearing is duly constituted, whether or not there were additional obligations. What you first said, Tim, was that there needed to be a written consent from the collective bargaining unit. That's not something that I was part of. I was not labor counsel, nor was I provided with any copy of the collective bargaining agreement. So that aspect I can't speak to. As far as the proper constitution of this public hearing. I can speak to that, and it is properly convened.
I'll let the record reflect I'm in disagreement with that, Mr. Chairman.
The, whether the board, you know, if you can be a little more specific, Tim, about the provisions that require the union's
I would defer to our chairman who just,
Well, this is
just
actually,
came through,
well, this is
who just came
actually,
through.
well, this
a collective
drop was from the prior collective
And
bargaining.
we have an ordinance, we have
And it
an
was-
agreement
it was
in
just-
place now.
Yes, and it was
So-
just verbiage that Rich, I guess, during the audit, that they discovered, it just needed some verbiage to be cleared up, so.
This
it wasn't-
was in a previous collective bargaining agreement, changed the age 55 to 52 and a half. So it is already clarified as part of a collective bargaining agreement, that is the intent.
It's not a matter of clarification from the collective bargaining unit, it's something in writing we need to have as an exhibit here for this hearing to be proper. For this hearing to be effective, for this ordinance to pass. And folks, what you're seeing here is another example of us constantly having to correct our ordinances that are not in order. The sole reason for this is, and every time I ask, who was responsible for this year, when this happened, last year, the year before, I never really get any answers. I suspect it's a previous solicitor. That's what I suspect.
Do you believe, Solicitor Orlando, that we need the collective bargaining?
I can't say yes or no. I have a great deal of respect for Tim's acumen and his knowledge, but I have no copy of the agreement. I have no copy of the contract that was just recently adopted, so I can't
Well, this is
speak
the
to.
one
This
from
goes back to-
before.
What's that?
This would be the 3-4 years ago agreement.
Well, the ordinance I was given was 2021, which is the ordinance we worked
Yeah.
from. That was adopted in 2021 by the board at that time. Yeah, I had nothing, you know, I'm the new kid on the block as far as that goes. I can't address the specifics of what we're talking about without looking at the collective bargaining agreement.
Do you have a copy of it? I would imagine our manager has a copy of it.
Backing up.
The original.
Yeah, backing up.
I have a copy here.
Thank you, sir.
That's the current one.
That's the current one, which it is not part of the current one, correct, Chief?
Yeah, so it's
And
not.
it needs to be, that's what we're trying to correct.
I believe we're trying to realign it with the
Right.
previous CBA, which had already clarified that it would move from age 55 to 52 and a half.
Exactly.
Well, I don't see any harm in postponing the hearing until it's done proper, that's my own opinion. You're not planning on, I think this just applies to you, does it not, Chief?
Me and Officer Zebra.
I don't think either one of you could, not wait another month.
You never know.
Oh, okay, okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Do you see any reason to avoid it?
I'm sorry?
Nothing to do with the current one, it has to do with the previous one or fix it.
Well, this is an amendment to the existing code, which appears to have been adopted in 2015, and I believe was amended in 2021.
Well, you continue with the hearings, I know there's more comments from us and the audience, so we just want to.
The title of this ordinance is an ordinance of the Township of Robeson, Brooks County, Pennsylvania, amending the Code of Ordinances, Robeson, Chapters 1, entitled Administration and Government, Part 4, entitled Police Pension Plan, Letter I, entitled Deferred Retirement Option Plan, Option Program, it's DROP, Section 439, entitled Eligibility, to correct the age of eligibility for officers hired prior to April 28, 2021. And the ordinance amends section 439, the 2015, actually, I believe it was the 2021 ordinance. That section refers to the eligibility as 25 years of service and age 55, and apparently it was supposed to be changed to 52 and a half. And the sole purpose of this ordinance is to change the age from 55 to 52 and a half. That's the sole purpose of the amendment. The purpose of this public hearing is to give any member of the public and the Board of Supervisors the opportunity to comment before we have other comments from the board. Is there anyone, a member of the public, that wishes to present testimony or offer comment about the proposed amendment? Let the record reflect that there is none. Do any members of the board wish to make any comment or offer any testimony?
Well, I'm just wondering if you truly would need to look, if you would need to review the collective bargaining agreement for 21. Since this is just, like I said, is the auditor had discovered that verbiage was wrong, it was just fixing up the verbiage.
It did not appear to me, from what we looked at, that would be required. But again, I'm not legal counsel. I was not involved in collective bargaining either in 2015, 2021, or even last year. That's Labor Council, which was prior to this round of collective bargaining, where you had special Labor Council. The former Township solicitor did labor work as well. So I can't really tell you. I mean, I can tell you this, as far as the second-class township code is concerned, this hearing is properly convened, the ordinance was properly advertised. So to that extent, this hearing is proper. If adopting this ordinance violates the collective bargaining agreement, which is what I believe Tim is alluding to, I can't comment because I haven't reviewed the agreement, nor do I even have a copy of it.
The auditor found it, the auditor wants it corrected. We're not trying to hide it, we're bringing out, trying to fix the problem. It affects 2 officers, and I think council is intelligent enough, and we have enough faith in him to go by what he says.
I go what by the ordinance says, there's no excuse not to do a job right. It's not that we don't have faith in Mr. Orlando,
You are
it's
not,
just something that
you are not
we've
our labor lawyer.
missed
Well,
again.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I would agree with Mr. Bitler here, I mean, if we aren't 100% sure, we're not 100%, and if it's not really gonna change the world or do anything bizarre, you just wait a month.
It's just so that we're clear, so that we can figure out
Yeah.
what it is that does need to be
I
done.
mean, everything
What
else is.
exactly is it that you think is missing?
It appears, and I'm not certain by any stretch of the imagination, I rely on experts to tell us this stuff and have these things in order. I believe the collective bargaining agreement has to approve this. I was not on that committee that approved that, but in looking through drafts of things and just literally in the last half hour, it's been a concern to me, and I just see why not do things right. We continue to
If we have to approve, I mean, figure it out,
we could
clarify, and then so, I guess,
My question would be as follows, so. Should it be in the current collective bargaining agreement, or is our reference to a previous collective bargaining agreement changing that age from 55 to age 52 and a half sufficient for the purposes of this hearing, if we were to move it to next month, to ensure that we were in fact, that it had been agreed upon even previously, or does the current one need to be revised to reflect such? That's the question I have.
I don't know, what do you think, Chief, since you've been involved?
I mean, as far as the revision of this collective bargaining agreement, I don't think that's the case here. I mean, you'd have to go to the association, okay, that's who's responsible for the CBA. All right, I believe what Mr. Bittler is stating is you basically need the blessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking for the blessing from the Robeson Township Police Association that they're okay with this modification. Because if the board would make a modification to an agreement, right, wrong, and different, technically they could file a grievance if they were against it. So I think it's just a matter of dotting i's and crossing t's. Am I correct with that explanation, Mr. Bittler?
Now, that sounds pretty reasonable, Chief.
So,
So I think we would continue this hearing.
unless anybody has anything else they wanna end the hearing, just verify this to the next time.
So that means you're gonna have to pull everybody back in for us to hear it again?
Well, we just want anybody extra, if you know else extras here.
No one comments, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so you wanna officially end the hearing?
It would be up to the board to continue the hearing. And we'll make further inquiry. Who does the board wish to direct that? Is that to the manager, is that the chief, or is that myself? That is to contact the organization.
The manager can talk to the guys.
All right.
There's no further public comment, any comment from the board, I think you can adjourn this public hearing.
All right, then the meeting will be adjourned at 7:16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, citizens concerned, Jay.
Chris, before we move on, I think we have a duty, an absolute duty, to announce there was an 8-minute executive session at the workshop spurned by Ms. Breitenstein.
Well, actually, it was spurred by me, because it was,
Well, in the minutes, the draft minutes reflect, she requested the meeting, but essentially, there's been no informing of the public what happened, or what I believe what we're legally required to disclose. So having said that, I believe that executive session was improper, and I believe Ms. Breitenstein had a question on fire companies, and then we also have a situation with our solicitor and resignations, et cetera. So I don't believe that was proper, but there you go. That's, I think, complies with what we need to do.
any citizens concerned?
Comment?
Yes, any public comment?
Okay. Yes, my name is Chip Hawes. I'm here with Ashley Margasuti for Green Hills Estates. Really simple matter. As I understand it, the township has prepared the development agreement, but there was a question about the municipal authority, a pump and haul agreement, and construction cost and surety. So what I believe I understand is that last evening, the authority approved the form of that agreement, that we are to provide costs for construction of the sewage facility, and provide that to the authority, and that the authority gave approval to execute
Well,
that.
there was no official vote last night.
Okay.
It's just, it was agreement, we were both there, it was just
Okay.
agreed upon, and you and Joan and Mr. Reedy
Right.
discussed things, and Joan's gonna figure things out for the next month,
Okay,
and then hopefully then it's all ready, and then
right.
things are signed.
So I think what we were hoping to do in terms of moving forward on a parallel track, what I think I understood was that June wanted to add a cross-default provision into the township's agreement. And that was contingent on having the agreement with the authority. What we'd like to do is, instead of waiting until next month to say, hey, this was all taken care of through the course of this month and April, would be to get like a conditional approval subject to the engineer's review and the solicitor's review for the township, to finalize that improvements agreement, rather than wait until, wait a full month, if we can take care of this in a week or two.
Is that reasonable to do a conditional approval?
Isn't this plan already approved?
This plan has
Maybe I misstated. What I meant was like to authorize execution of the improvements agreement, subject to finalization of the agreement with the authority and the reference to the cross-default provision in the township's developers agreement.
Yeah, that, there, just to amplify, the developers improvement agreement, was completed, on, what's this, Tuesday? yesterday, when we received the final revision dates from the plan, my assistant updated it. But then last week, we received a pump hall agreement, which was, as far as our office was concerned, a new dimension. So I was in touch with Mr. Hawes's partner, and after I looked at it, I alerted the board. I think you all got communication from me about it. I also reached out to Attorney London, who indicated that they were not finalized at that point, but there were active discussions. And I indicated that once the authority, who really is the lead dog on this issue, once they're happy, I didn't have a great deal of comments on the pump hall issue, other than the agreement I saw did not have an indemnity for the township, which I would insist on before I could recommend it to the board. That appears to be agreeable to the developer. And I also indicated to Attorney Mooney that since it was tied into this project, I would intend to modify the basically completed developer's agreement to include what I call a cross default provision, which means if you're violating one of them, you're automatically deemed to have violated both of them. Again, I believe
Yes.
Attorney Mooney indicated that such provisions would not be objectionable. So they haven't been prepared or written yet, because I haven't seen anything from the municipal authority.
You know, last night, Joan, the discussion was, and that was more or less agreed upon, it's just Joan has to write everything up. And then,
Yeah, and I think they also have to come up with the escrow amount
Yeah,
for the
for
authority.
amount, yeah. So it's more or less
So,
done, it's just not written up.
So it's, in my prior experience with my other municipalities, when the township board is comfortable with the circumstances, it's not unusual to approve an authorization to execute an agreement once in between meetings, if it's approved, usually by the engineer. But that's at your discretion. You don't have to do it, can do it. There's certainly, other townships have done it. I don't know what the policy is here. First time it's coming up since I'm your solicitor.
Well, regardless of the policy, I'm gonna be upfront with you. I would not be in favor of executing anything that I haven't thoroughly reviewed. I'm not big on this solicitor reviewing this solicitor reviewing this, and then we sit here and mid-meetings, there's things being approved. This is our existing sewer system, so take a look at that. Take a look at that. That's our existing sewer system. The pump and haul situation seems to be something that's been discussed all along. But I've got grave concerns as we sit tonight, that this sewer here is overflowing, going right in Allegheny Creek. This is the last storm, and it's been doing this for months. So I have real genuine concerns from a practical standpoint, what's gonna happen with the system. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is raw sewage, folks, going into the Allegheny Creek. Sir, you're shaking your head out there. You know what I'm talking about? You live on that road?
I live on that road.
I can't speak to what you're describing, other than to say, we have a development, the plan approved, not one house built. What we're trying to do is to build houses, and what we're waiting on is finalizing the agreements that will implement the township's requirements. So none of what you're talking about, sewage and failed systems, has anything to do with our project. Our pump and haul is to address the homes that are gonna be part of this development. And I understand that at a point, we might add a second train to serve the municipal needs. But again, those are two
So when you
completely
have houses
unconnected-
and you're pumping and hauling, where are you pumping and hauling that to?
That's,
To the plant.
right.
To this plant here, that's already,
No.
To this plant.
No, the pump, I don't have all the particulars. There's a pump and haul agreement that was addressed last evening, I believe the sewage, the septic is to go to a facility in Chester County, but I don't
Yep,
remember.
it's Westchester.
So it's not coming to Robeson?
And
No.
it's 22 homes, 22 homes are, and then we hook up the tank and it's ready to go. And we're building a whole treatment plant and also to assist the township with putting a second train to help as well.
This pump and haul is until we figure out if we're building just one train or two trains, and I think that's part of this issue with the construction cost is that, you know, we were gonna have an agreement with the municipality, then we weren't, then we were. I'm not sure of all the background, but again, there's no failed system
Yeah.
that we're addressing. What we wanna try to do is to get all the paperwork in place such that we could have the plans executed and start applying for building permits and not, not sort of have
They
this.
have the approvals other than what you seem to be doing is seeking us to approve documents we haven't seen that are gonna be revised. Is that not true?
Standard improvements agreements that, in terms of all that, now again, I'm getting in the deep end of the pool, but what I thought I understood was that the improvements agreement addresses curbs, sidewalks, streets. I think I understand all those facilities are in.
So from a planning standpoint, from the township end, not authority and township end, this is at a point where the plans are ready to be printed.
I have
Okay?
them in my car.
Okay,
I
great.
have them for whoever wants to sign.
So once those plans are delivered to the township, I will take a look at them and I will issue a letter that says they're adequate for municipal signature, okay? We have an agreed upon escrow value for the municipal, for the township improvements, and we're waiting on this agreement with the authority, correct? So once those pieces are in place, they may be signed and released to you for review.
Okay. So
Can
again,
I speak on any of that?
I don't think we're trying to ramrod anything through. I think we're trying to, on what might be a couple of amendments to the improvements agreement, providing the cost estimate and coming up with the security to satisfy the authority, however long it might take Joan to get it done. But again, if it's done in a week or two, we wouldn't need to wait to finalize the agreements, and we'd be 2 weeks ahead of the game, 3 weeks ahead of the game if we could. That's what we're asking for.
When Mr. Orlando mentions indemnification, he catches my attention. When something's absent from something that's an absolute assistance, that gets me.
And I understand, again, the cross default provision, to the extent that, the need to provide for sewage, we're providing for that. You want that in the improvements agreement, or at least an indemnification provision and that cross default provision. That all makes sense. But again, I think we're talking about filling in some numbers, standardized form documents. I'm taking a lot longer to describe that than what I think it takes to prep them.
Could you finish?
From a developer's agreement, the values that we've agreed upon, Ashley and Joe, I think, we are covered from the municipal side. They were working on a separate agreement with the authority. Sounds like our solicitor would like to tie the two of them together. So that's where we're
Yeah, so last night, it's happening, it just hasn't been ready, so.
I mean, I agree with Supervisor Butler. We don't have it on in front of us, we just stopped the public hearing because we were missing something. So I tend to agree that until we have it all right here, I don't think there's any problem at that point. We'd like to see all of it.
We can't vote on what we don't know, unfortunately.
All right.
And I would have abstained anyway because of the proximity to my family's property, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Well, thank you for your time.
Okay, do you want me to give you the plans and send you? Right,
You can leave them here.
Okay,
Can
I'll
you find a
just-
spot to
yeah.
leave them?
yeah,
With the manager.
Thanks again.
okay.
Have a good evening.
Any other citizens concerned?
I raised a citizen's
Oh,
concern.
well, you got a whole
last
section for you down later.
week. Okay.
You got a special place for you. All right, then we'll do correspondence, and on Thursday, we look at the Berks Nature stuff, because that's there. And this Rich, the Board of Elections, is that.
That has been returned.
All right, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board, residents. First item on my agenda is I'm respectfully requesting a motion from the board to authorize me to contract Shred-it to come to our building here to destroy records which were covered in a resolution from last year. Shred-it gave us the best price. That price, to be exact, was $1,250.50. I asked for approval to not exceed $1,275. This would come out of 409-500, and I discussed this with the manager. I also have room for if the township has boxes to destroy, so there's room for up to 20 more boxes at that price. So wholeheartedly, it'll probably come in less than what I'm asking for.
Anyone like to make a motion for chief counsel to contract with Shredder to destroy all three documents that cost not to exceed $1,275?
I'll make that motion as stated.
I'll second. Roll call, Mr. Gallow,
Yes.
Mr. Bittler,
Yes.
Mello, yes.
Okay, thank you, Board. Next item I have is for discussion. We had discussed prior speed complaint from some concerned residents of Old River Road, one of which is present tonight. I had provided the board some statistics previously. I'll kind of just go over the highlights of them, and this is from the 1300 block of Old River Road, which is the section of Old River Road to the west end of our township. Previously, I reported there was a total of 12 violations. The average speed was 19 miles per hour. The average car count over that duration was 92 per day, and the top speed recorded was 49 miles per hour. Speed limit there is posted at 35. Okay. Additional surveys produce the following, which I'll add to that. Okay, there was a total violations of 6 additional, so for a total of 18. The average speed for the second period was 18 miles per hour, so it actually went down. The average car count went up to 104 per day, and the top speed recorded dropped a few miles per hour to 45. We discussed briefly with Ryan, and honestly, it would be my recommendation that the board, if permissible, consider reducing the speed there from the 35 to the 25. If you travel through that portion, because of the close proximity of houses and parking, if you're doing 35 miles an hour, it feels like you're doing 70. 35 miles an hour is ridiculous through that area. Most of the times when I'm just driving normal patrol, the sign will light up and I'm not even thinking about the sign being there. I'm doing 20, 21. That's what I'm doing in the patrol car. So, like I said, if it's permissible, and the board so chooses, I would definitely support the board in considering a reduction to 25 miles per hour in that section. I also had data for the 1200 block, as I believe actually Mr. Horst, if you don't mind me saying, had brought it up. A different section of that same roadway, the speeds were higher in his opinion, and he was exactly correct. I still have our device out there recording data, but I interrogated it today and was able to extract the data thus far. Total violations now, remember, the last study on the 1300 block was a little over a 2-week period, had a total of 18 violations. In 5 days, that other section had 120 violations. Okay, now a violation is simply over the speed limit by a mile per hour. Okay, so it's 35 through there. Okay, however, your average speed in that section went up to 31.5. Okay, so it went up from, say, 18.5 as an average to 31.5. Average car count per day is consistent, which it should be, relatively consistent with the other section of Old River Road. That came out to 100 per day. And top speed recorded on that stretch was 58 miles per hour. So my recommendation for that stretch would be to leave it at 35 and for my officers to get out there and do some speed enforcement. So that's what the studies have showed me so far. That's my analyzation, and I wanted to present that to the board for you to take whatever action that you choose to take.
Now, would you need a better study than that if we decrease the
I'll defer that question to Ryan.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I think what we need to add to that, the second section that you quoted does not have the residential
That is
density.
correct. It's closer down to the Allegheny Creek.
Right.
There's
So,
only 3 houses there besides the Byler house.
Right.
so I think, if the board would elect to move forward with reducing the speed limit in the first section, the chief and I can get together, we can quote chapter and verse of the proper code to gain that density. It's a certain number of housing units per linear foot. I believe it does meet that, and we could investigate
It does,
that.
because I talked to another gentleman who is a code person that does code for other townships. And he was at my house the other day, and he agreed that, hey, because of the density in that section, it meets the linear feet, and you could just put 25-mile-an-hour signs up without any type of engine, any type of study.
we need to document it and then
Correct.
address the actual changes.
I also have the data that I extract from that unit, comes out in a spreadsheet form, so we would have that documentation as well. You know,
So you really just want a motion to get the process
Yeah.
going to decrease the speed limit
I
to
think that would be the
25,
best thing at this
and then-
point,
and
if
section one.
that's what the board so chooses.
Is that what the board so chooses?
Yeah, section one, I agree.
Anyone like to make a motion for that?
Make a motion to move the speed limit to 25 miles per hour in the first section. What was that block, chief?
It's 1300 block.
1300 block to 25.
Well, after proper.
Well, after the chief and Ryan assess what's necessary.
Do we have a second for that motion? I'll second. Roll call.
Yes.
Mrs. Joy. Mr. Gallow.
Yes.
Mr. Bittler.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Board. Ryan and I will work on that. And just under enforcement of the speed limit, anything that's under 55, okay, 3368 of Title 75, which is known as the Pennsylvania Motor Vehicle Code, states we must get 10 miles per hour, okay? So ultimately, what reducing that speed limit sign does is allows us to start enforcing at, say, 36 rather than 46, which I think is very feasible and generous for that area, so
Or pull people over and give them warnings.
that is correct. That is correct. So just so you understand, that's all I have, unless you have any questions of me this evening.
Surprised you wanna,
Yeah, you know what, maybe I'll add to that, yeah. So, last meeting, actually, I did a lot of speaking of an officer, and it was Officer Jacob Ketterer. And the current CBA, which is a newly signed CBA, basically gave the board, myself, the latitude to advance an officer in the salary scale. I had budgeted for this, and the board had graciously did that. They advanced Officer Ketterer based on his performance, his behaviors, and a lot of different variables. Well, since then, we had a burglary, actually Thursday of last week, we had a burglary at a business around 10 in our township. So the night shift cars have obviously started focusing on some commercial properties while patrolling. Sunday into Monday, then actually early Monday morning around 3:45 in the morning, Berks County was getting hit with some burglaries. The officer was Jacob Ketterer, and he was hearing these calls go out. So he moved his enforcement and what I consider aggressive patrol of our commercial properties, doing property checks, business checks, which I'm very proud of our night shift, they do a lot of, and they document these. So from our prior burglary on the 14th, which was the prior week, we had gotten some video footage, and we knew we were looking for a red vehicle, but we couldn't make out what kind of vehicle it was. Officer Ketterer obviously knew this information. So while he was on patrol, he happened to look in a business that had an empty parking lot earlier and noticed a red vehicle parked there. When he pulled in, he actually observed an actor attempting to gain access with a pry bar. So he took that individual into custody without incident. Neighboring jurisdiction that was investigating a current burglary, not an attempted, they came down and the officers did a good job working together. Officers at times have what I consider type A personalities, and the officers did a great job, put the egos aside, worked together for what was best for the situation. So that department filed criminal charges, and we have 2 cases that are pending against this individual. I can speak on behalf of my career. Catching somebody doing a crime in progress, such as burglary or theft, is not a very common thing. It doesn't happen often. And when it does, it's a fantastic thing. And it shows that the officers are out there at 3:45 in the morning doing their jobs. And that's patrolling the township, trying to keep your properties and the residents safe. So I think it's definitely worth giving Officer Ketterer some public recognition about the job well done. I'm very proud of him. Thank you.
thank you. All right, well then, Rich, we got finance.
Or you're looking for approval for the monthly expenses, treasury report, sewer agent report, that are in your workshop packets.
Anyone like to make a motion to approve those monthly expenses treasury report and sewer injury report that's in our possession?
On that sewer aging report, is there an account listed at $125,000?
There was apparently an error.
There was a typo, they were investigating that.
So rest assured, folks, no one owes the sewer authority that kind of money.
And we can make a motion for those reports and expenses?
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the monthly expenses, treasurer's report, and sewer aging report with that correction.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mrs. Joanne,
Yes.
Mr. Gallow,
Yes.
Mr. Bitler,
I'll vote no.
oh, yes. All right, Rich, you got your, thing down there.
All right, again, we're just making note here, Ethics Commission filing, I've asked for those by the 31st of March, as Supervisor Bittler's pointed out. The official due date is 1 May, or that gives us some time in case we need to run a few more down. I appreciate those who've already turned them in. As for B,
Before you move on, folks, this is essentially what we're talking about, I believe, I'm not clear. There's several different years audits here. And it's good to keep your shit, in order. Some of the things that, as you look back on those and reflect back on an audit during the year, if somebody asks the question, why is this, why is that? It jumps out at you. For instance, when we talked about that sewer problem, it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have $1 million in our sewer fund, half of which roughly is uncommitted and half is available. Is that not true?
might have to look at that.
Okay, I think that's true. And some of what information you get by looking over these audits as a trail of time, these are the last 2 years. And sometimes when you can look back, you can also look forward. So, for what it's worth, it's not something that's optional, we like to spend money on, we need to do this, we have to do this.
As part of that, to expand upon what Supervisor Bittler has put out to all of you, the other reason for these is it also looks at our own financial backgrounds, so the things that we have invested interest in, and it ensures there's no conflict of interest for you, the public, while we sit on boards. So that's a main purpose of that. It looks at our income, it looks at our investments, and those are things that are very, very important. So if they come down to audit, they can see that as our chair pointed out with the Green Hills Estates, that was when he abstained from that vote because there was a potential financial interest therein. So again, these are the things that come out in that. Okay, request for a motion from Solicitor Render to develop a release and hold harmless. I believe that was approved at our workshop, so we can move on from that. Again, I'm still looking at this replacement copier for the township. She actually called today. I didn't have an opportunity to speak with her, so again, we'll probably push that into the April workshop as I get some more information for us. And then 2860 Plow Road, again, I'm gonna have to get you some more information. I believe that's when we'll have to push into April. There's something else that came up today with our code enforcement officer that took precedence, and so again, we'll push that into the next meeting. Any questions?
If not, we got Geigertown Fire.
Use over fire report in hand, I believe. Also, right now from the 30th, we are having a chicken barbecue and an egg hunt open to the public at 1 o'clock at the station. That's all I have.
Rich, can you put that on the website?
So at last month's meeting, we talked a little bit about, I think you were gonna contact your roller and talk about, say, joining forces to fight these fires. You recall that conversation?
Yeah, that conversation
Okay.
happened.
Did it
And
happen?
Galen had that conversation outside with
I'm
him.
talking to him, Ms. Bridenstine. Did that happen, and what was the result of it if it did?
Haven't heard nothing back.
I mean, did you reach out to him?
Yes,
And
I
you
stood right outside the door here. You got video camera, you could see me standing out there.
and
spoke
I
to
watched it. I stood
Deputy
there,
Chief
Mr.
Galen
Miller,
Brown.
And he didn't get back to you?
Haven't
No.
heard nothing back.
and I approached him at the fire company, Mr. Bitler, just to back up what you were asking. And the answer I got was, none. So we're all trying to do and work together as a team. It's a little difficult when you don't get cooperation from all sides.
All right, so we don't have anybody here from Gibraltar?
No, and you haven't, and
We've
we
not had them here for
And
a
we don't
while,
have a
and,
report.
and we need to, figure out something here to make sure we're utilizing, you're gonna see later in the agenda, Geigertown is asking for funding, which is normal. which we've done repeatedly for their trucks. I think it's a truck payment, right? Alright, so, you know, we fund the fire companies, we need firefighting protection, we need, in my opinion, better cooperation. I've said before that there seems to be something that I'm not understanding. And I'm really trying to understand that as to why we're not more, you know, maybe efficient with our resources. So I'm gonna personally reach out to Mr. Cup and maybe Mr. Brown to just see if there's some issue. That sound like a
Mr. Bittler, I think
plan?
that's a really good idea, because I reached out to CUP and they ignored it, okay? I reached out to Galen and I observed Michael speaking to Galen, and I stood there and listened. Just so that I could make sure that you got the correct information. They don't get back to you, they don't wanna work together. I'm sorry for that, but it's been like that for the last 10 or 15 years. You live right here. You hear the sirens. You know better than anybody. Do you see them leave? I know what the answer is, and so do you. So let's look at this from a joint perspective. When I asked for an executive session, that was to make sure that I had permission and it was okay to bring out in the public that we were going to request something from the county that shows things so that we can figure out what's happening as a board of supervisors for the best interest of our community. Because having someone having to run from Geigertown to something that is less than 100 feet down the road from Gibraltar Fire Company is a little ridiculous. It doesn't help resources, it doesn't help funding, it doesn't help working together. So, we've already done what we can do, so maybe you need to try.
I'll certainly make that, hold on there, I'll certainly make that, but I request, Ms. Brightenstein, that you don't comment on what you think I know. There's a problem with these fire companies, both fire companies.
No.
There's a problem with both fire companies that we need to kind of look at and think about and, you know, figure out if there's a better solution. That's my opinion. And in terms of your request, that's an improper, Clear Sunshine Act violation with respect to what you tried to do. And anytime that happens, including all the email exchanges and all the stuff flying
I
around
didn't
you
do
people.
anything but ask a
All the
question.
time that happens, I'm gonna report to you, the residents. Plain and simple, you're on notice.
Alright, we got the minutes next. Or the
Okay.
reorganization meeting minutes from
The
January.
reorganization meeting, I did include the comment you asked for, sir, that is in the packet that I handed you this evening. There is an update to that, the rest that I left the meeting right into context. Solicitor Orlando, to retrieve me from outside, and then Solicitor Orlando then returned my call after we returned to the meeting room. So I spoke to him to gain his guidance, so that is now in there. Again, that's included in your current packet.
So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes, dispenses, and reports that are in our possession?
The problem, Mr. Gallo, is you said at the workshop meeting that the problem in the nutshell here, folks, is we received those minutes January 3rd, January 4th from Mr. Steve. You were nice enough to show me your laptop, etc. We only got them, I only got them February 20th. There needs to be a better flow of information. It's been a struggle for the 2 years I've returned to the board, 25 years ago or so, like 20 years. I served on this board before.
You're not being fair.
So we need to get this
Listen to
information.
Well, the thing
Quick.
is,
Listen to Chris.
the thing from Harold, was he was no longer the supervisor, and I look back at that. We got his last email December 20th, and he actually had the Bugs Bunny, that's all folks, on his last email that we received that Harold was responsible for.
We got an email from him after the minutes that he did, January 3rd or 4th.
Well, he didn't
And when I
do- no,
asked
he
that,
didn't- he didn't do
No.
I'll
those
provide a
minutes.
copy
No,
next
he
month.
They don't exist, but.
They do exist, and I'll provide a copy. But suffice it to say, we just don't get the information quick enough.
Would anyone like to make a motion for the expenses reports? And the minutes? Anyone?
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes and expenses reports in our possession.
I second that.
Roll call, Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
Mr. Bittler.
I'll vote no.
I'll vote yes. All right, Ryan.
Good evening, board. A number of these items we did touch on in the workshop. The first item that I have is a NPC time extension request, that's for Cedar Hill Estates. These have certainly been before you in the past. That written request is attached to my report, and they have requested an MPC time extension. So that's now before the board. It was recommended for approval by the planning commission.
Anyone like to make a motion for the Cedar Hill Estates?
Just formal approval, they've already agreed to it, so. We agreed to make a motion for the Cedar Hill Estates MPC time extension.
I'll second. Roll call, Mrs. Bueller.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Bitler.
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you. In similar fashion, Rock Hollow Woods has a plan before the planning commission. They have also requested a time extension request for the MPC review time, and that's to address some comments and direction provided by the planning commission.
They've had previous extensions, have they not?
I don't believe that this one has, Mr. Bitler. This is the first time that this plan has been before you for an MPC
But
time.
this is the same developer, if you will?
This is the amended plan of record that's before the planning commission.
And that original plan was sent to you or reviewed by the township when? Do you know that? Well, if you don't,
I don't, but again, I think it was probably 2 months ago. I'd have to.
the original plan submitting that they did not seem to follow through. This is that subdivision, right?
No,
Yeah, so
not in that sense.
if you recall, I think there's two separate issues.
Right,
The first one was they had an approved plan that's approved and recorded. They decided not to complete those improvements. They came before the planning commission seeking direction. Direction was given that they should file an amended plan of record. That filing before the planning commission is this MPC time extension that's before you. The second item, or I'm sorry, the third item under my agenda has to do with the construction phase of this, in which they're also asking for a time extension to sort through the planning phase so that they can record that.
Is the construction consistent with the first plan,
It
the
is.
outdated plan,
Yes.
or the
Correct.
amended plan?
It's consistent with the original plan for the learning center to be built on the property. However, when it got to the point of time in which they should construct the learning center itself, the adjacent land became available to them, as I understand it. They purchased that instead of allocating the funds to build the building.
so they extended Rock Hollow Woods Environmental Center to bring more of it to our community.
So anyone like to
I make a motion that we accept these MPC time extension and the escrow of Rock Hollow Woods construction escrow time extension, and it is with the original plan.
So we have a motion and a second.
I will second that.
Roll call, Mrs. Joy.
Yes.
Mr. Bill. Mr. Bitler.
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Item D, I think, is an update item for the board. I believe the manager and myself will try to provide you the context for this. As you're well aware, the board authorized Whitman Engineering to begin the engineering design for the Rock Hollow Road Bridge. We have been ongoing survey, ongoing environmental permitting, ongoing. Several weeks back, Rich and I received an email from the county, Berks County, advising us that they would like to schedule a field view of Rock Hollow Road Bridge as they have funding available for bridge improvements. The bridge was selected by the county and was potentially suitable for 100% federal funding for bridge replacement. We responded quickly in an effort to try to get our arms around this situation, because that's the first I had heard of any potential funding source for this outside of municipal funds, and I believe the township office as well. We scheduled calls with the engineering consultant who is responsible for beginning this process, who's not an engineering consultant we had appointed to do the Rock Hollow Road Bridge project, as well as the county itself and their representatives so that we could better understand what was going on. Our understanding, based upon those conversations, is that there was likely no way that the manager or myself, given our tenure here, would have been aware of this. And potentially the township itself was not aware anyway. This was a bridge that at some point was placed on the radar for funding sources, and for one reason or another was selected this year. We quickly engaged them, advising the county and their engineering associate that this bridge was under contract to have a bridge replacement design done by the township using township funds. And our question immediately became, could the outside funding source be redirected to another bridge? The county immediately turned their attention to the bridge out here on Old River Road, our other problem bridge, and said that that could be a potential source of shifting funding to then have them fund a replacement of that structure. Our response to that was, we need that to be definite, before we would provide any guidance or present this to the board. Since that time, we did receive an email from Alan Piper with the Transportation County Planning Commission, and Alan has advised us that he has received emails from PennDOT advising him that they are in agreement to shift funds from the Rock Hollow Road Bridge to the Old River Road over Allegheny Creek Bridge, and that he may advise the township of that, which he did via email to both the manager and myself. So that's where we currently stand. Rich, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think the only thing to really add to that for your consideration, please keep in mind that in approximately spring of 2025, they will in fact conduct the replacement of the bridge on 724, which may in fact then push traffic onto Old River Road, depending on how that is structured and blocked for that construction on 724. So that may in fact tie in very well for the replacement of the bridge immediately following that project, and the timing will be just about right on that. I suspect the bridge on 724 will move into 2025 to 2026, and then we're looking at probably starting that project on Old River Road sometime around 2027, 2028, if I look at their timeframes correctly.
It became apparent very early on in our conversations that the use of federal funds would require a much longer design and review period. We understand of the timeframe of roughly 5 years. So if they were to proceed with Rock Hollow Road Bridge, a bridge that we intend to work on this year, that construction would be pushed out an additional 4 years. From a timeframe standpoint, that's exactly correct. That would tie in very well with the state's replacement of 724, and then subsequently township with federal funding replacement of the Old River Road Bridge.
We're just lucky they're shipping funds.
We are very lucky.
Yes.
That's a bonus.
Never had this happen before in my career.
Well, happy day for us. Extra money being able to pay.
And considering that that bridge on Old River Road will be replaced with a newer type of bridge, with a substantially larger construction cost than will be applied more than likely to the one on Rock Hollow Road as well. So certainly worth our money to transfer that.
You don't need anything from us.
So I don't know if you're looking for any official position from the board. We wanted to advise you of this and let you know where we stood. At this point, it certainly appears like we have it in writing that the county is going to be proceeding with a field view, and there will be a date becoming, I don't have it with me, a date that we can make available to the board, where this will be, the Old River Road Bridge at this point will be viewed by the county representatives and the engineering consultants responsible for the design, and that will kick off this process.
Happy day.
Okay, if you have any questions on that after you think about it a little bit, feel free to reach out to Rich or I. And finally, the Zion Road culvert. I believe maybe you can get this started.
So we'll kind of tag team this one as well. So this last weekend before last now, there was an issue, again, with flooding on Zion Road, near the intersection with Buck Hollow. We know this has been an ongoing problem. We recognize that part of the issue is more than likely a beaver dam, approximately 200 meters upstream from the roadway. We're gonna have to look at a solution to that, either to trap and release elsewhere, or to trap and move along. The other issue is we noticed, as we went and I was there with the officers and we talked over a couple of things. Also happened to notice that there's a pond, right there. That pond has actually breached its upper bank, and is spilling over, and we believe that could also be a byproduct of beaver dam upstream. So, reaching out to the homeowner, we're gonna make contact here over the course of the next week and a half to see what we can do to mitigate not only the issue with the stream, but see if there's an issue with that pond that's there that's also impacting that, or if the beaver dam's impacting the pond and so on. We're trying to come up with a holistic solution with the homeowner because we are going to have to, we already have the project in for emergency funding to replace the culvert itself. And I know that that's still in process, probably in a 6 to 8 month time frame before that can be done. However, again, we want to try to mitigate everything at one shot rather than fix one problem only to have another crop up one down. So that's where we stand with that, and just wanted to bring it to your attention.
That's all we have under engineering, unless you have questions on my report. All right, Solicitor Orlando.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, there's nothing on the agenda. I have nothing further unless the board has any questions for me.
Okay. All right, Public Works.
We had on Friday taken delivery of the 2018 Mac. Everything went pretty well with that. We are looking, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking for the motion to put 3 items on a municipal bid for auction. One being the 1999 GMC, the other one being the 2004 John Deere backhoe, and last, the 2004 Freightliner.
So to clarify those, number one, let me take one step back here for
Sure.
my crew leader. The resolution would be actually 24-05. I had that misaligned with our ordinance. So our ordinance would be 24-01. We have not had an ordinance yet, so that was the first one. So the resolution to create the line code 437.748 will be 24-05. And again, I have that in the packet to be signed this evening. And again, thank you, board, for your approval for those motions to actually purchase the 2018 Mac. All right, so the motion to sell, I'd like to request a motion to sell the 1999 GMC 7500 dump truck, starting price of $5,500. A motion to sell the 2004 John Deere backhoe for a starting price of $3,500. And a motion to sell the 2004 Freightliner on municipal bid with a starting price of $2,600. Please keep in mind that we do have a Freightliner that is on order and due for delivery sometime towards the end of this year, which is a replacement for the 2004 Freightliner.
All right, anyone like to make a motion, you can make that all as one.
I was gonna say, can we make it all as one, because they're all going on in municipal bid? So, okay, we're gonna make a motion to sell the 99 GMC 7500 dump truck, the John Deere 2004 backhoe, and the 2004 Freightliner on a municipal bid. Prices for the dump truck were $55, the backhoe's $35, and the Freightliner's $2,600.
Okay, the motion, that's second. Miles, roll call, Mrs. Joy.
Yes.
Mr. Gallo.
Yes.
Mr. Bittler.
I'll vote no.
I'll vote yes. All right, Rich, Park and Rec.
I got one other thing, sorry. Yeah, L&H was out today to give us, and to measure out, LED signage. They're gonna give us kind of the bare bones estimate, as well as, he's like, oh, do you want like a billboard? We don't want anything like that. I don't know what he was getting at, but I told him to sign something similar to what we have, double-sided. So I am waiting to hear back from him. He just came out today, as well as a company, Firewatch, which was the company that installed the new LED signage at Robeson Elementary. They are going to have, they're kind of all throughout the whole entire United States, so their territory field rep is going to get in contact with me next week, and she's going to come out, to give me a quote as well.
That was actually coming up under old business, but we'll just.
Oh,
cross that
sorry.
one. That's fine, no worries. Okay, so with Parks and Recreation, we had a couple of things that I'm gonna be asking for some motions to approve on. As you note from the previously presented treasurer's report, we do have 61,000 plus in our open spaces account, and we really should take some action on the park here, right at the corner of 724 Gibraltar Road. So with that, and Lisa, thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate that from our Park and Rec Board. Motion to approve a purchase of playground mulch for up to 3,000. Motion to approve purchase of Diamond Tex.
Let's do them separate, let's do it separate.
You want to do it separate?
Yeah, do
Okay.
it separate.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that.
Since there's so many of them. And there's varying amounts.
And
So anyone wanna make a motion to approve the purchase of playground mulch up to $3,000?
Make that motion.
I'll second, roll call, Mrs. Joy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Mr. Bittler?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. All right.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to purchase the Diamond Tex up to 1,000.
And I'll second, Mrs. Cole.
Yes.
Mrs. Joy?
Yes. Yeah, don't even do that to either one of us, we kill each other.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Mr. Bittler?
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to get this pack stop repair and replacement up to $9,000.
I'll second, Mrs. Joy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Mr. Bittler?
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
We need power washing, and painting the park buildings, correct, 9,000? I'll make that motion.
All right, I'll second, roll call, Mrs. Joy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Mr. Bittler?
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
And then last, we need a motion for seal coating line painting. Basketball, volleyball courts, 2,500, is that correct?
Yes, sir, please be advised that actually the volleyball court will become a pickleball court, per our earlier discussion and discussion at the workshop. That was not correct within here.
We have a motion, I'll second, roll call, Mrs. Joy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Mr. Bittler?
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
Now, does that seem to move forward, Parks and Rec? Is there anything else that you guys think you might need?
Oh, yeah, more making on this.
Come back
I'll be
next
back
month.
next month.
Come back next month.
This is a work in progress,
Another-
Saw
right?
what money we had, right?
Yes.
And see what disappeared, but
Mhm.
there's nothing more
Just
important
fix
than
it
our
more.
youth. One thing I'd like you to take a look at that I did speak with our prior manager about was some kind of bridge, if you will, where we have the parking where the job Johnnies are.
Okay.
There's kind of a ditch there, if you've known the drainage pattern of that. It'd be nice to have some kind of bridge to get it over that ditch in wet times to kind of get to the pickleball court and others. So you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah, we do have an idea for a walking path around the
Yeah.
park, so we'll probably incorporate that with it.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good Eagle Scout Golden Boy project.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or a Girl Scout, because I already called Becky about that one.
Yes.
All right, very good. We got EAC.
We approved that last one.
Yes, I was gonna say,
No,
We just
we just
talked
talked, we just talked about it.
Yeah.
Just talked about, okay, yeah.
we're just asking for a motion to support it.
Anyone like to make a motion to support House Bill 797, which is related to PennDOT, not Robeson Township,
Right.
PennDOT putting native plants, shrubs, trees in all their green space where they just have grass. Which then saves money with mowing and,
Looking for a second, Mr. Chairman?
well, I didn't motion, I'm just asking for a motion.
Oh, okay, I'll make that motion.
Roll call, Mrs. Joy.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
All right, more
Mr.
twigs to
Bittler.
pick up.
Yes.
And now, yes. All right, any new business? If not, we'll go to old business. All right, first on the old business is the resolution for us adopting rules and regulations regarding audio and video recording conduct during public meetings. This is obviously, this is Thursday. disagree, this means we're going through it one by one.
Maybe before we do that, I've had an opposition, until we straighten out the mess that I think we have with ordinances, I've had an opposition, generally speaking, to getting new ordinances, particularly unless there's some really compelling interest, and there's not. In fact, for my new colleague on the board, I'm just gonna read one sentence from the Township Supervisors Handbook that kind of explains at least my philosophy with enacting these ordinances. Before, and I quote, before considering the acting of an ordinance, or in this case, a resolution, it's important to find the specific authority for taking that action and make sure the proposed regulation is not in conflict or preempted by Pennsylvania Constitution, etc. The ordinance should directly relate to a proposed objective and shall be the least restrictive means. In this situation, we've had really only one problem. It's known that I've been the one that paid for, installed, promotes, or whatever you want to say, so that you, the residents, can see what's going on. And there is no need, period, before we go through this line by line, there's no need, period, for this ordinance. The only problem we had was when the machine, when the camera was unplugged. That happened June 30th of 2023. And only one person was at the camera, Mr. Gallo.
You can accuse
There's
me of
only
that
one
more time.
person at the camera,
I
and it
wanna
was you.
ask, I wanna ask a question. Are you directly accusing me of
I am not
unplugging
directly
it?
accusing you
Then
of
stop
anything. I'm
mentioning
stating a fact that
Stop
this
mentioning
public
it.
can see right here, June 30th, at 1 hour and 31 minute
On
mark.
Thursday, you know,
Either
Tim
accuse me or get
Midler
over
Jr.,
it.
Tim Midler Jr. brought these concerns up. I said to him, please provide those concerns, which he did, and we had said we would discuss those concerns, right? So that's what I'd like to do, since you brought them up, and we didn't have it in front of us on Thursday.
Sounds good, thank you.
And so now, the first, number one, where you said the whereas clause cites the wrong section.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, as soon as you landed, you looked at this, I don't know, you said you didn't have this at the time. Do you think that, cites the wrong section of the Sunshine Act?
Both sections that are referred to refer to the right to adopt resolution with this. So no, the section is not wrong, but it's also not wrong to add an additional reference as young Tim has suggested. So you could take out 7-11 if you wanted, you can leave it in, you could also add 7-10 as I think he is suggesting.
Rules, or, section 710 references the actual ability of the government to promulgate rules and regulations necessary for the conduct of its meetings. Section 711 is the individual, member of the public's right to record that, and then 711 references section 710. So if the whereas clause is referencing what statutory authority there is to pass any regulations, it should be 710 and not 711. That's not big on the Richter scale of issues that I have with the resolution.
But, I mean, and he said we could tweak it a little, so. All right, well, that would take care of your number one there. Number two, you said about any restrictions, only person can record when the meeting is open to the public, and when recording devices must be turned off, should be stricken from the resolution entirely. The person has the right to record the public meeting room when it's open to public parts of the board conducting business. There should be no significant government interest in regulating recording time prior to the visit. I don't know anybody's comments on that. Anybody have comments on that tonight?
Well, my comment is, Mr. Chairman, that these concerns all should be on the website. People should see copies of the ordinances, so they're not sitting there in a vacuum hearing us ramble on about things that there's no context to it. So why don't we put this out on the website as a potential ordinance, get a lot of feedback. I've had hundreds of hits on that.
Well, but like I
There's
said,
no
I would
downside.
still like to, we promised him we were gonna do this
So
on Thursday.
maybe-
Well, we can do that in addition.
But so I'm gonna go
Wait,
through all
not.
that stuff. and-
Why don't we be quiet as a board, let the chairman and let Mr. Bittler Jr., instead of you, address this? Since you caused this, let him address it. You wanna be transparent?
Excuse me,
Go
I
for it.
caused
let's-
what?
Well, let's just continue and stuff. So anyway, so any restrictions on this one, it's open to public. I guess that's gonna be,
That's the largest constitutional issue that I see in terms of the violation. I'm sorry. Is that amusing to you, protecting constitutional rights? Laughing?
Would you like to read a little further?
Not rude, it's already
So,
wrong.
it is.
Person.
Because,
all right, and then let's actually, I'm gonna skip down to a paragraph that Edward Junior wrote, and I was gonna, pretty much I knew I was probably gonna quote this a few times. I look forward to discussing these revisions, et cetera, in a professional, courteous, and substantive debate, da, 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 da. So let's just please be professional, courteous, and let's just talk about it, right?
Thank you.
So anyway, so go ahead.
So the prohibition on when any recording can take place whatsoever is the largest violator, in my opinion, of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, Pennsylvania Constitution, and the Sunshine. Because what you're doing is prohibiting all forms of recording during specific periods of time during the time that it's actually open to the public. As I mentioned last Thursday, there's no difference if someone came in here and sat in the room and heard what someone had to say, or a demonstration, or if the board comes in and starts to take action very quickly, the shutting down of that recording device and then restarting it and reestablishing a live stream, you know, in the case of YouTube, and that you could miss very important information. And it's very clear that the First Amendment protects a right of the public to receive and access information, in addition to expressing itself generally. So that's why I think that's the biggest ticket item that should not be regulated. If the building's open to the public, it should be allowed to be recorded.
Section 711 states, while if the meeting is proceeding, if the meeting is adjourned for executive, there's no proceeding.
It's not a motion to adjourn for executive session, though. You're taking a
You didn't make a motion.
to adjourn.
No,
I'm sorry, I'm correct. But reading that,
Well, that,
no, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No, it states the word proceeding. There is no proceeding at that point. The meeting is
The meeting is
paused for
ongoing.
executive.
It's ongoing as soon as it's commenced and until it's adjourned.
So I guess my question is, the whole hang up here is recording this room when the board is not in it. Why do we need to do that?
Because
That is my concern.
it's not the role of the government to ask why someone wants to exercise a constitutional right.
But you are under that section of reasonable regulation and control of the meeting room.
It's that which is necessary to preserve order.
So you're saying, this is not being
What's the
smart.
disorder?
I could walk to the Township building at 9 AM tomorrow, record Mr. Howard in his office, and I could record Sheila doing her work and spin around and record everybody's conversations with the general public, Sheila's lunch plans. That's the
No,
same
it's
thing I'm
different.
hearing.
It's
How
not
is it
though.
different though? It's a public
It's
building.
not. So this is when the building is open to the public to
Building's
attend.
open to the public during its open
No.
public hours.
Can I finish what I'm saying? How about we do this? I won't interrupt you if you promise not to interrupt me.
Deal.
Can we start with that
Let's
ground?
go.
Okay.
I
So,
just have a question.
I'm sorry.
I have some questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So there's a difference when the building is functioning in its administrative capacity as opposed to right now. It's a designated public forum where free speech activity is promoted by the government. The whole purpose of this meeting is for the involvement of the public to come in and speak, be able to provide public comment, and frankly, to discuss matters of public interest, whether the board is sitting here or not. So when that period of time is occurring, there is a right to report. It's different than when they're just acting in their administrative capacity.
Well, one question I had about this, now we're thinking about this, and then you always have the two sides thing, so you're, the right to record, but then there's the other people that says, I don't want to be recorded.
When they appear at a public forum, they're a willing speaker, so any attempt, it is. You're here in public, what you say, is something that can be consumed by the public. This is a public meeting that's open to everybody to hear what has to be said, right? So there is absolutely no difference if it gets picked up on YouTube or not, especially with the sign that I placed there myself. And the sign, the fact that it's announced before the meeting starts, there's no difference.
Okay, when we leave the room, in all fairness, I know from sitting back there, 90% of the time, it's not about what we discussed. It's about, hey, what's going on in my life to my family or friends. That's not something that YouTube needs to know. That's a little bit more outside of what we're considering the constraints of. Everybody has a right for free speech, okay? But sometimes people take this opportunity that they're gathered together to have conversations that may be considered personal. We're trying to be considerate of people and still allow them to see what's going on throughout the township meetings. I don't see what goes on when we're not here, because those people could go out on Facebook and say whatever they wanted. They could do anything they want about it. What's necessary when we leave this room is to try and be respectful of the people who are sitting there who may wanna have a conversation that maybe they don't want you to know. Have some respect on both sides.
Well, backing up for a second,
It's your
backing,
son.
oh, I thought you were done. Backing up for a second, until I came into office 2 years ago, this board, previous boards, asked the entire public to leave this room. I felt that was uncomfortable for people, unnecessary. So the bottom line is, when you're here doing an open meeting, you need to maybe talk in a lower tone. If there's something really private, you need to consider that,
But if it were to
for the reasons that have already been articulated. That's an open meeting. There's more people in here streaming and watching us. We shouldn't be talking about personal things. And frankly, folks, you all know that it's me personally that's been generally taking the bashing of all the little idle chatter, which does not faze me. So a lot of the chatter, is nonsense.
So Mr. Orlando, what is your thought on the recording beyond the time of the meeting? Before or after or?
As I mentioned earlier today, I got it, to see young Tim's letter this morning. So I have not had any opportunity to look into interpretations of the various amendment provisions which have been cited. I will say, based on the language of the Sunshine Act, I would echo what Mr. Gullo said. The way I read 711, it says that the public has the right to record the proceedings. If the board adjourns and leaves the room, the recording is not recording a proceeding. You can say other things. You can also point out that whether or not the district attorney prosecutes, if you look at Title 18, you will find out that anyone recording another individual without their consent at least falls within the parameters of the plain language of the criminal code for wiretapping. I'm not making an opinion about wiretapping or criminal conduct. That's not my point. My point is that when you try to apply a statute, you have to look at not only the statute at issue, which in this case I think is 711A, and it does clearly say, as Mr. Gullo said, recording the proceedings. That's the parameter with which we start. One of the concerns I've expressed is about Title 18, which is the wiretap law, because I can read that too, and if you did read that, you would recognize that individuals, and maybe not in our county, but the plain language of that statute very clearly says that if you record in Pennsylvania a conversation by another individual without their consent, okay, it falls within the parameters of the language of that statute. Again, this is not a debate about the criminal code. I merely point out that I believe that if you want to interpret, and that's what you have to do, you have to interpret 711A, and you have to try, to the extent that you want to make any regulation at all, you want to make your regulation have a reasonable relationship to the concern that's addressed. On Tim Jr.'s side, he's pointing out the concern about constitutional protections for actions. I believe what Ms. Bridenstine has just said is all I'm saying. In weighing any legislative enactment, the board needs to try to balance concerns, okay?
If I could address.
The ultimate,
Sorry.
the ultimate, decision of whether or not you are successful in balancing those concerns will ultimately, to the extent that someone doesn't like what you did, that's why we have judges. I cannot be a judge. I can only do my best to try to give you a best shot based on the 90, well, I guess it was more like 50-some minutes I had this morning to send comments to you and looking at the statute.
With respect to the potential criminality, the key word that Solicitor Orlando correctly cited is consent. So when it's announced that it's gonna be recorded, it's posted that it's gonna be recorded, and you still say something anyway, that's implicit consent, and the case law in Pennsylvania is very clear that that is valid consent and that the potential violations of wiretap are not enforceable.
Now, hold on a second right there, Mr. Bidler. Chief, is that not a relatively accurate statement based on your contact? I understand you've had contact with the DA. Is that accurate? Is that statement basically accurate as it relates to the wiretap law?
Yeah, with the, when I had made contact with the district attorney's office, what their recommendation was a bigger sign than that posted behind the board that is permanently fixed there. Just everybody can read it.
But the point of the wiretap, and I don't wanna belabor this point, there is no expectation of privacy. You've consented by being in a public building. Is that not basically what he said?
If you are notifying the people that they are being recorded, like you did in the beginning of the meeting, they are notified,
Okay?
okay?
Alright, so in all due respect to Solicitor Orlando, it's nonsense as it relates to this wiretap. How we got bogged down in this with all the other things this board has to do is, in my opinion, nonsense.
So again,
That hurts nothing on there, on a piece of furniture that my parents and other family members from the Playground Association in the 40s donated to this township. There's not been one problem with this.
Must you yelling?
I just want to give it 30 seconds. No, I'm sure not many people read this proposed resolution. Is in this piece, it is saying you may record the meeting 1 minute before it starts. It would be paused during executive session until the board returned, and then it would be started again. And then once the meeting was adjourned, it would be turned off within 1 minute. So what we're arguing is recording
Just the meeting.
the residents in the room when we're not at the board. The whole meeting will be recorded, the whole meeting will be displayed. The audio, the video, nothing is being restricted except the conversation of the residents when the board is not in the room.
It's actually not accurate, because
That's number 4 on your.
you can skip.
I'm giving my version of this, and we went over why and I, can I finish? You interrupted me.
You interrupted me on that.
So we're even again. This was written, obviously I didn't write this from start to finish on my own. I researched heavily through several townships, municipalities in not only Berks, but Chester, Montgomery, and Bucks. And there's several first-class townships that I took this language from, specifically this part right here. So I just want to add that if first-class townships, which are much larger, and first-class townships have this language in a resolution, and they've had for 10, 15 years, 3 years, it's been approved and it has been fine. But again, I just want to harp one last time, we're stuck on recording the residents when the meeting is not happening.
If it's not that big of a deal, then don't include that and just allow the recording to go on there.
That is the complaints from the residents that were recorded when we were in executive.
When did we get these complaints?
When do you
And
get?
You get lots of
Who
complaints.
complained and when?
We don't ever
I'm
know.
gonna, let me mention one more item. There was an employee in this room that made comments to another person, and there was my opinions from retaliation against that employee. Some actions taken towards that employee due to things they said when they thought they had a conversation that wasn't being recorded, whether they believed it was or wasn't. I still just don't understand why we need to record when we're not in this room. If someone can clarify for me why we need to record when no one is in this room having a meeting, I'd be glad to listen, but no one can provide that.
The reason is that whether the board is still in executive session is a piece of information conveyed to the general public by the live stream itself. I'm a father of a very young son, he's about to turn 1, and 7 o'clock is tubby time. I'm missing tubby time right now to discuss this with the board. When I have my phone and I have the YouTube stream on, I listen to a lot of the meetings and I have it in my earpiece. And when the board is in executive session and that live stream is still going, that is conveying the information to me that the meeting has not adjourned, that no additional action has been taken, and that I can wait for the board to resume, have the, vote on anything that should be voted on after the executive session, and then I can hear the adjournment. What the proposal does is requires the live stream to end.
Pause.
No, end.
Pause.
And it says you can't operate the recording device. It says turn on. So you have to turn off the device, then the live stream goes dead, and then you have to scroll and refresh the YouTube channel to see if it's back on or not, and then you're gonna miss that contemporaneously. You're gonna have to hope that you have to hope that it comes actually back on live, and we've had no technological difficulties with that live stream whatsoever.
Now, I hired a consultant. The consultant works also for Exeter Township. I cannot pause that easily. It doesn't work that way. And this is, again, there is no expectation of privacy here. If you wanna have a conversation, do like you used to do. Take it out in the hallway or take it out in the parking lot or whatever.
You can watch it on camera then when we do that.
I don't have, the camera fix is right here. What I can capture of the room, that's. By the way, folks, again, this was me paying for this, providing a township service after the Zoom was eliminated.
This is
And we can get into the Zoom if we'd like, but there is no reason for this.
That was Act 22, Scott was referring
Alright, so
to.
we gave our opinions on 2, not the, so 3, the restrictions on where a recording device can be placed should be stricken. I was thinking about that too. I mean, obviously, I always say we can't govern common sense, because if you don't have something in there, somebody could, put something right here and then put something right there, and then we're lined up with stuff, and you don't want that.
And the wording of that, was there would be a designated location for cameras.
I mean, that's a good location.
There, over there, and not what Chris said here, or somebody has a selfie stick and they're waving it in front of the audience behind them. That's a general, like in a press conference, media is given an area to stand. At a baseball game, cameras are given an area to be placed. That's all we're just stating, is we're not gonna allow cameras to be free placed or hanging from the tiles. We would give a location, please put all your cameras here, if you're recording.
Why don't we regulate something when it's a problem? Anybody say that's a problem?
No, we're not
There's
saying
no
that.
sticks, there's no
No,
sticks
no.
waving around, there's nothing happening.
This ordinance would be 2 parts if we address the problems. We are addressing the whole thing based on how other municipalities have done so in one swoop.
And like I said,
That's not offending you, your camera can stay. Maybe that's
unfortunately-
the area.
And then we can't govern common sense, like I said, common sense is somebody shouldn't put a camera here. No different than common sense that someone should go fast on Old River Road, but you have speed limit signs that people don't pay attention to. So it's the same thing. But anyway, you have a rebuttal to that.
Sure, so the regulation when you're applying First Amendment principles is supposed to be narrowly tailored, right? And it's supposed to be the least restrictive means to accomplish the given task. So certainly not having a camera right in your face makes total sense to me. And you could do that, the least restrictive means to do that would be to say where the camera cannot be placed, in terms of the camera shall not be placed, within 3 feet of the table or on the table itself. Because I don't see how it's narrowly tailored. If I stand here with my cell phone and I'm live streaming like this, I'm not bothering anybody. And the fact that it's a designated place, why should I be treated as a second-class citizen and sit, in the back to try and get a good angle in the roped-off free speech zone, which is what the resolution does.
The wording, which I'll read, is section D. Recording devices shall not be operated from the area set aside for the general public so as to not interfere in any way with the activities of the Board of Supervisors or the ability of the general public to observe the Board of Supervisors. That's it.
I think my point still stands. The least restrictive way to do that is to say that you can't place it a certain area, at the table.
Or we designate one area and it's plain and simple, it's one statement.
And one of these says something.
Yeah, and E, which I can add on, is they shall be positioned in a designated location, which we would provide. It will provide reasonable access to record the proceedings without distracting or blocking the view of the audience and without being affixed to or occupying spaces on furniture, walls, or fixtures in the room. That's more, let's not, it says affixed, not sit. So we're not gonna let somebody screw a camera on Mr. Bitler's cabinet from his family or to that table or tape it to the wall. That's just general wording.
That's not Mr. Bitler's furniture, it was donated by the Playground Association.
Well, then number 4 is your, and I agree and disagree with that one. You know, if you say the minute, the one that's like a minute before, the one that says when it starts, and then I would make, the assistant chairman would make the comment that, hey, turn it on after probably, right when we're starting at 7. So yeah, I see that.
And the more concerning thing with that is that you're controlling if you can report prior to the meeting and after the meeting, because I think that's where that First Amendment principle comes into play.
Yeah, which letters are they here? 1 minute before, and then, so yeah.
That was actually a suggestion by our solicitor too. Because I had put, I think originally before you reviewed it, start of the meeting, end of the meeting, you suggested, I believe, put a minute before and a minute after to allow movement to get up and do that.
And
I don't know if I said a minute or,
I believe it was.
some short period of time,
Well, and B here where it says.
so that nothing would be missed.
Yeah, at the commencement of the meeting, the chairman and vice chair shall announce to the audience the meeting may be recorded. You could technically get rid of that sentence, right, and just keep the minute before it. Yeah, the last sentence would be. That's 4, right? And then I guess number 5, you wanted that provision added.
I commented on Thursday that the general, a main issue I had with the way the resolution is drafted is that it's one-sided, it's regulating the activity instead of promoting the right. And you saw in my letter, the very last paragraph said that I asked the board to amend the agenda for tonight's evening, for tonight's meeting, to vote affirming the importance of freedom of speech and freedom of press in Robeson Township and commit to those principles. Because this is simply a regulation on free speech as opposed to protecting that right. And the Sunshine Act also states that there's a right to record these meetings. To not include something, if someone tampers with someone else's ability to record or interferes with it, I think something needs to be added to protect the right of the people to record.
And my rebuttal to that would be is we're letting you record, we just record 6:59
If you're gonna regulate the public and their ability to record, you have to regulate the conduct of the meeting in terms of the people interfering with that ability, general public, right, to record.
And that's what happened. The device was removed, the plug was removed. That's been the only incident.
And then number 6, you have the consequences.
I thought that the possible immediate removal of someone from a meeting for violating any of the provisions in the resolution is an extreme remedy that has a chilling effect on free speech.
So now I spun that when it says shall be, it doesn't mean it would be, I mean, I wasn't, necessarily thinking the first time somebody's dancing around with their camera here, I was gonna be, oh, get it out. I was gonna sweep it nicely. I mean, that's how I read it. It would just be, shall be, it doesn't mean any will. If you just nicely say, hey, could you just sit there and record versus you're here, you're there, you're over there, and then it's disruptive and then they don't wanna stop, then I say potentially. So I read that a little different, so
If I may jump in, you did state you were suggesting a warning be given. The wording says any person or entity, fast forward to this, in the event a violation is discovered during a meeting and the person or entity does not immediately remedy the violation at the request of the board, such person shall not be permitted to continue the meeting in which the violations took place. There's a warning, and it's not saying they're being removed from the meeting, it's just saying they're not permitted to continue the recording.
Sure, right? If you read it though, it says they shall be subject to removal from the meeting, not after a written warning is given. So it gives the board, in theory, discretion to arbitrarily enforce a minor infraction can result in removal.
I think the board's adult enough to ask once, ask twice,
I will say, the
Kinda like a
last, I
child
don't know how
on
many
TV,
years,
right?
only time someone was removed from the meeting was that woman that was angry about her neighbor's horses, remember that? From Geigertown?
Yes,
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and
That was
she,
here for
and
that.
she was freaking out.
Yeah.
And we gave her many warnings, I think she stood up at one point, when the meeting was situated differently, but she would have been sitting, she was standing over where Mr. Kime is roughly, got up, was disruptive with that, and finally, well, actually, I think Chief Phillips might have been the chief at the time, and she was just up and flailing and getting very violent kind of, and then we just nicely asked the chief to ask her to leave, and she left yelling out the door, but that's the only time anybody's been asked to leave the meeting. Because they clearly were disruptive, they clearly were acting different, and threatening more or less.
Unfortunately, we may not always have as reasonable chairman as you, so, you know, I always, conservative governmental principles, to me, would say that we should not give discretion to the board, it should be an equal applicability of any potential sanctions. So, what's good for one is good for all, but to eject someone from the meeting for violation to me is, overly harsh when it's a protected constitutional
Yeah,
right.
unless you're yelling at school.
Sure.
I like your stuff. Now, and like I said, thinking about all this stuff, I mean, obviously we said about the Soul 7-11, 7-10, the warnings or no warnings. We agree on some, disagree on others. I mean, I think there's some changes that could be made. But I don't know how you wanna proceed with that, I mean, what's the thought? I mean, if we add the 7-10, the 11, keep the 11 there, because Solicitor Orlando said that's correct if we wanna do the 7-10. If we do the warnings, like we just stated, get rid of section B, last sentence, like I said, where, I would say, hey, start recording, get rid of that, and then do the minute, which then is still, a little leeway. I know we're not all gonna agree on all those things, but I don't know what everybody thinks.
You're still skirting around the issue, Mr. Chairman. This is an open meeting, even if the board's not in here for whatever reason, and that recording needs to continue.
And
We
the
don't
thing
need
is,
this ordinance at all. If we're not physically here, if the meeting has not been adjourned, this meeting is open, this meeting is subject, and if you need to say something, you don't need to say it where you're heard. You don't need to say it in this room.
personally, I mean.
We don't need
we
this
can-
ordinance, period.
Well, we can protect both aspects. We tweak this a little bit. You record the whole meeting when it's truly in session. You protect the people that even though it's gonna be posted if there's a bigger sign like Chief Castle said, there's probably still some people that don't necessarily wanna be recorded. So now you're protecting their wishes. You're allowing 5,000 people to record it if they're here just during the meeting. So you're still allowing the meeting to be recorded. You're just getting rid of the public time, which then would help the people that have that concern.
I fundamentally don't understand that concept.
Well, but if you're the other side, then they would say you're not fundamentally understanding their concept.
Oh, I understand perfectly.
balance.
It's clear as day, right here.
No,
Clear
No,
as
it's a
day.
balance.
With all due respect, the balancing of interests, they're not equal interests, right? The interest in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of access to information, the Pennsylvania Constitution mirrors that, freedom of the press to accurately report what goes on at these
But
public
you're not
meetings.
the press,
Doesn't
right?
matter. Falls under the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Well, the thing with that stuff, you always laugh when, you always interpret the First Amendment or any amendment when
It's not an
when it was written.
interpretation.
Well, but I'm just saying,
I will get you a copy of the US Constitution if you like
the
it.
founding fathers
I
did
have one
say
on my phone.
the right to record things, because they didn't even know that was gonna
No.
exist. So, the modern technology is
That has
changed
nothing to
that.
do with it.
But we're not saying there's no freedom of speech, we're just saying, record the meeting.
The beauty of the Constitution is it's not confined to the time in which it was written. It was drafted in such
Oh,
a way
yeah, I'm
that
just saying,
changing
we're not saying
changing
don't,
technology.
just like Supervisor Golo said, record the meeting all you want. we're just trying to protect the people that aren't necessarily thrilled about the time before, after, or when we're executive.
But when you're, and I said this on Thursday, when you're regulating free speech, it has to be a significant government interest, right? That is narrowly tailored to serve that significant government interest. To protect someone's inadvertent disclosure of private information in a public forum is not a significant government interest. It just can't be, and they're not equal considerations. It's an oops versus what they fought and died in the revolution for, right? And James Madison said there are more instances of the abridgment of freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachments of those in power than by the violent and sudden usurpation. And then George Washington said, if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. So that's the level of importance that this right has, and this is what the board is attempting to regulate, as opposed to, and oops, I forgot that the recording was going on and I said something I shouldn't. That's basically the issue.
As far as your statement on government interest, the meeting room, we have reasonable regulation in the meeting room, and legislative bodies have a very broad discretion to implement reasonable rules. I see these are reasonable. That's my opinion.
The definition of reasonable in a First Amendment context
Can be
is,
interpreted by all in this room differently.
but when the court is going to evaluate a First Amendment claim, they're gonna define reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions as content neutral, narrowly tailored to serve a significant governmental interest, and leaves ample alternative ways to communicate open.
Okay, but
Fails the second.
you're basically saying that if you don't get your way, you will sue the township. That's basically what you're saying. I've already seen it at the bottom of your letter. It's like, come on, if you care about your township,
Well, we have a question, your name and address, well, you don't need to ask, your name please.
Brody Workman, want to make it short. I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a member of the fire department. I see an easy solution. Leave the camera on, but when you leave the room, mute it. I've done YouTube.
Well, that's what we're trying to say.
You can
Yeah.
literally hit a mute button, let the camera play.
Yeah.
Then people who are listening to it, when they hear noise start again, they'll know
That's
that you guys are.
what I'm thinking, you record it and then.
And I mean, you could you could have it on 3 hours before the meeting and 6 hours after if you wanted to, just hit the mute
And
button.
now we just need to change a word on there because we said turn off versus.
Because I completely agree with you're allowed to videotape in public places.
Yeah, and
I get
we're
that.
not, well, we're agreeing with that, we're just trying
But
to do.
just to do a even balance and make everybody happy. People don't wanna be, when they leave, yeah, Mike and I talk about fire company stuff, maybe we don't want that out on YouTube.
right,
You know what I mean? And then if you're recording, it's still open to the public, but maybe private conversations aren't being broadcast to the 114 viewers that I saw today when I was watching.
I mean, that's what I think we're
that's
trying to
basically
say.
the point.
I just
Name,
have one
please.
thought.
And your thought is, Mr. Kern?
Tom Kine, Red Bear Road. I've done live broadcasts in the military when I was doing work for them as a soldier. And we had board meetings like this. One thing that was always done was a light was on when the recording was on. A red light somewhere that said recording in progress, period. So it's, when it's recording, that light was lit. One other thing that could be done, and it's very simple and very easy, when the board leaves the room, put on background music. The people seeing it will hear the music, they know that it's still going on, and it'll mask what's being said in the audience. It covers both situations. That's what I did with the service.
Yeah, because like I said, we're not saying nothing.
One light.
Meeting, it's just-
That's lit, maybe the light only gets lit when the board leaves and that when they come back. But it's just a reminder of the people in the audience that they're being recorded. The other thing is, put in some background music at a little higher volume and just let it mask what's said from the board, from the gallery. How many times have you heard newscasts that said they were caught on a hot mic? How many times? Political people, other people, so it eliminates both of those situations by masking the microphone when the people are out of the room and a light shining, it says the recording is still going on. That covers both situations, and I did it. So, that's what I did.
The right to record is not just video, it's the audio of what goes on in here. If someone wants to stage a demonstration during the time you're in executive session or have a substantive discussion among residents, that's something that is absolutely able to be transmitted under the First Amendment. If you drown it out with other music, or someone could even talk to the YouTube and say, you know, their thoughts to the general public on what's been going on in the meeting. That's all possible. And there's no better way to make sure that everything that happens is accurate than to allow video and audio recording at all times. In case there's an incident that occurs and you want that record.
Look under hot mic on YouTube and see what it comes up.
So let's,
So, just real quick, what I'm hearing before anything is the second whereas we would add section 710. Under B, we would change turn off to mute, if that was the wishes.
move on that.
It says, turn off to mute, and then remove the last sentence that the chair, vice chair, or chair would be making an announcement, it would be the sign that be stated will be posted. Just going on the notes that we've taken.
And then,
As I know some.
There's also paragraph J that should have to be removed that says, no recording device may be used to record private conversations between audience members or officials or others whose comments or questions are made privately and not for public consumption. As I said in the previous workshop session, the person who's recording can't control that if it happens during an open meeting. So it can't be a violation if someone whispers under their breath, man, they're really talking a long time about this recording thing, and they didn't want that to be recorded. That shouldn't be something that a person is accused to violate the resolution for. They have no control over someone else's intent.
look, we're gonna do another draft and update things.
See the two changes.
Can you deal with those changes?
And changing it from turn off to muting doesn't solve the constitutional issue.
There's a lot of other issues that the community doesn't know about, which might come out of my mouth a little later, and it won't be a real happy one.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat that?
I said there's things that will come out of my mouth later, they're not coming out now, because I didn't like the threat to sue at the end of it. And that's exactly what it was, which mirrors Exeter's, because of Gabe. And I know you're well aware of it, and I know your father's well aware of it, but I'm not going further with that. And
Solicitor Orlando, do you have any thoughts
Any other
on
opinions?
our discussions here tonight?
I think the point that Tim Jr. just made about other people being able to manipulate a violation is a valid one. And I don't know exactly what the language was that you suggested deleting about the recording of private conversations where someone might try to trigger so, yeah, I would take a look at that.
You're talking J, which is no recording device may be used to record private conversations between audience members, officials, or others whose comments or questions are made privately and not for public consumption.
Yes,
That would be fine, removing J.
I
That
think
was
that's a valid point.
borrowed from another location, but
Just because another municipality violated someone's constitutional right doesn't mean that it's somehow valid.
To the extent this board violates the Sunshine Act by going in and out of executive sessions, does things they shouldn't do, it's entirely proper to think township residents would enforce their rights however they see to. We don't need this ordinance, there's not a problem. For those of you who don't know, this is the third or fourth meeting in a row that there's nothing on our solicitor's agenda. The way this unfolded is there was a meeting early in the morning, nine o'clock, whatever, the next morning after the meeting, never discussion. It's rolled out and reviewed by our solicitor without, in my opinion, the authority to do so. You can see right here where he's directed to do stuff. This is a botched attempt that's not needed. Period. Needs to be taken off, done away with, abandoned, and if and when there becomes a problem, somebody's doing something they shouldn't, in my mind, Chief, that's disorderly conduct. That person can do, there's nothing disorderly about having our opinions known. If there's a problem in this meeting, it could be dealt with.
With that note, I don't believe this is restricting anything from being recorded that needs to be recorded. So I'm gonna make a motion that we take this resolution with the following adjustments. Whereas in section number 2, we add 710, the sunshine law. As well, in section B, we change turn off to mute. And as well, in section B, we remove the sentence at the end that the chair or vice chair will make an announcement to the audience that the meeting may be recorded to include audio and video that will be replaced with the sign. And section J, which we just discussed, would be removed.
You made a motion, do we have a second?
Can we all hear the conversation that's going on?
Sure.
I just
Number
like to
one
hear
was what I
you're
just said out loud. I'm clarifying for Ms.
So you
Rogers.
have a motion on the floor.
I do.
Is there a second?
You like
I'm
to
not sure I even hear the motion.
Okay, like,
I asked for him to repeat it because I wanted to make sure I had the correct
you
information.
stalled tactic enough. I need the motion. We're looking for a second.
Second,
Thank you.
You think this is a stall tactic,
Absolutely.
protecting the constitutional rights of American citizens?
that's, don't play us,
Okay.
do not play us.
Very
You've already
disappointing.
threatened, when I got to the point where you threatened to sue, and things didn't go your way, I was done.
That's how the legal system works.
Alright, so we have a motion and a second, roll call, Mrs. Joy,
Yes.
Mr. Gallow,
Yes.
Mr. Bittler,
I'll vote no.
yes. Alright,
All right, in the interest of time this evening, I'm going to mention now, with reference to the old business C, D, and G, and I'll table those until April's Board of Supervisors workshop. We've already discussed F, which is electronic signs. However, I want to address B, which is the Gaza liaison, So I have done significant research with regard to that. It was suggested to me that it was required to be a member of the Board of Supervisors that served as our liaison to Gaza. Gaza includes currently 5 board members, 2 from Union Township, 2 from Robeson Township, and 1 member which is approved by both townships and who must live within the Gaza service area. Those of you who are not familiar, the Gaza service area is essentially in the area of Geigertown and extends out towards 345. And that is then fed into eventually the Birdsboro sewage treatment plant. So, after looking through the bylaws, the articles of incorporation, I did not find anything. I spoke with Mike Dunbar, who is the Gaza liaison solicitor, which is the Gaza board's solicitor. He did indicate that there was something in a document, could not specify what that actually was. We did some further research. We found what is essentially the Penvest documentation. So Penvest was essentially what established the loan. And in that documentation, there is the requirement, I should take one step back. Neither the bylaws nor the orders of corporation require a member of the Board of Supervisors to be a member of the Gaza board. So they can just be 2 members from the township, each township, and then 1 approved by both. The Penvest documentation does make a requirement for the dispute resolution board to include a member of the Board of Supervisors from each township and the member of the Gaza board who is approved by both townships, so the one who lives within the Gaza service area, that in this case is Pegler. So my recommendation would be that we post this on our website, that we have a vacancy for this board. It is open to any township resident. There's no requirement for that resident to live within the cottage service area. And that we also appoint someone to serve as required and or as needed for dispute resolutions as they arise. I'm not aware that any have come to date at this point over the service of the Dodge Board. So in this case, we'd be looking to probably have somebody, number one, I'll post that to the website to solicit somebody to, if they have an interest in doing so. And then I think the board should, we can push this date while we have time, but to discuss, or excuse me, not to discuss, but to decide if one of you would want to serve as that dispute resolution board member, if that need arises. Does that make sense to everyone here? Okay, and then finally, I do want to discuss briefly general code. We've discussed this in the past. It actually was brought up during our February meeting. General code is the service we talked about, codification of our ordinances. And one of the things I believe in an email I saw earlier from Solicitor Orlando, he mentioned or referenced the fact that, I'm not sure, it may have been a reference to this resolution, may have also been a reference to the ordinance we were discussing earlier with reference to the drop. That it would be very helpful for us to do a codification. I believe Mr. Bittler, our Supervisor Bittler, also pointed out that we do need to get that in order first, and I would agree wholeheartedly with him on that. And I think this is a good way to do that. That codification service currently is $28,500. That's over a 2-year program. What they will do essentially is they will take all of our current code. They will, as it is already laid out, they will actually make a table of contents for that, but then they actually break that down further. They go through a legal review of that documentation. They look at our current ordinances. Do those ordinances line up? Are there resolutions or things that conflict with that? And they essentially bring everything into a tight circle so that it is easily researchable, not only by us, the board, but also by our township residents. They can actually select it. As an example, which I believe I brought up before, in researching my father's estate, looking for on-site septic and the requirements therefore, and whether or not I needed to actually replace on-site septic, or so again, there's the ability to do that. I could actually just click on-site septic or type in the search word and so I'd like us to consider that a motion to bring that before the board. I think for the April Board Supervisors Workshop, I think would be sufficient. I don't know if we need a motion tonight, but if I can bring that back before you, I'd like to do so.
When we hired Richard, we walked out to the parking lot together. You remember that?
I do, sir.
And you remember I said, good luck, this is a mess. Remember that?
I do, sir.
You folks have witnessed what I'm talking about. These ordinances are not even primed for codification. You just saw and heard at an earlier ordinance hearing that we don't even have our ducks in order. So I'm not sure, I'm in favor of straightening the mess out, but I'm not so sure it's gonna be done for that amount in that time frame. We need to take a serious look at this problem. To have a guy job, that's a Geiger Town Area Joint Authority, and not even know that, to have to rely on, it's telling you what I said, you just heard it in multiple settings.
And sir, I believe my argument as the manager for the township is that this is exactly what this service does, is to help us bring all this into line.
I'm not sure, sir, respectfully, I'm not sure
Manager?
you have that expertise to say that. I can tell you without a doubt, the conflicts you just heard from our solicitor, who inherited it from a longtime solicitor, the issue that you just have heard and have heard over the past 6 months shows you the problem.
This goes back to the 70s. I mean, we're starting problems way back when I was in school and Harvey Eshelman, Greg's father, was on the board. The reality is, you've got a nightmare because you follow one, it takes you here, and it references section here, and then you go from this one to reference here. That's what these people are gonna do, which would save us time, money, lawyer fees, and an engineer's not gonna have to chase his tail. Okay, do you chase your tail, Jason? Ryan, do you chase your tail?
There are some times that we go around.
Jason, he does not.
Jason, I know Jason was here, I know. Hey,
Jason did.
Jason did, but the point is, you chase your tail. So we waste a lot of money on attorney's fees and engineering that we would save that amount of money in a year, if not more. so it's kind of ridiculous. I can't hear you, Mr. Bittler, as you would ask me.
Well, I just wonder if there's an executive session. So anything else, Rich?
No, sir, I'd like to bring that again, I'll bring that information back in front of the board for our April Board of Supervisors work session.
Okay. Alright, so any executive session this evening?
Do I have the right to bring things up? I'm asking before I open my mouth, since I've been told I violate the sunshine law. Okay.
What are we talking about and pointing at? You don't know.
No, because it refers to you, so maybe you want me to be hateful or to just throw it out there. You throw us under the bus plenty.
I don't throw
We have a
anybody
cease and
under the bus,
desist
I follow
From
the
the
law.
Teamsters over you.
Alright.
Cease and desist.
It says personnel, that's executive.
Well, I don't know that that's a personnel issue. I'm
You-
willing to
he's-
get, I'm
he's a-
willing to get
he's
into
a
the Teamsters,
supervisor.
whatever we want. There's no shyness in this fella.
No, you were abusive to an employee.
I dispute that. I dispute that. Do we wanna get into Teamsters and, we wanna get into that, Mr. Chairman?
I know, I just made a statement about you getting a cease and desist, not the rest of us for causing a problem. Tired of you throwing everybody
I
under the
support
bus but
this, I
yourself.
support the Teamsters, there you have it.
You
When we
throw
have
everybody under the
employees
bus.
that get fired,
Alright, I'd like to.
fired
make a motion to
inappropriately,
adjourn.
I support
I
that.
second.
9:05. Do we have to give a second?
You did, you got a second for me, Mr.
I'll second that motion.
Now, Larry, that's all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.